The captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seat and fasten your seatbelts. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Mercedes, and this is the very first episode of Skyward, and I am so excited. Here, you'll get a behind-the-scenes look of aviation, where you'll experience people's personal stories from various parts of the industry. Today, we're kicking things off with an incredible guest. Her name is Alivia Chanyi. She's a first officer at Jazz, a regional airline partner with Air Canada. She shares her journey from student pilot to first officer and both the challenges and triumphs throughout. Olivia's story is one of passion, perseverance, and a love for aviation. So buckle up as we dive into her inspiring journey and the first of many stories to come on Skyward. Welcome to the podcast, and I would love to start with asking you what is a brief synopsis of your flight training and experience, just to set the stage.
So I never, I'm a first generation pilot, so aviation was never really something that was like kind of in my world. I grew up wanting to like maybe be in sports medicine or a gym teacher, but it was never really aviation until a sightseeing flight. It was September 17th, 2017, that my parents got my brother and I a ticket for a sightseeing flight. And so by the way that the weight and balance worked, I was able to sit up front, and I just like, that was when we travel, we get on the plane, but you kind of go to the right and go sit down, right? So it was never like aviation was this thing for me. And but then I got to sit right in the front seat, and it was like, I got to hear the radios and be right in front of all the controls. And
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. And so then, so my brother was in the back with his friend, and then we went up and just like, I don't know, seeing my town from above was just like, it was just such a new perspective, right? That aviation was able to give me. And so it was like, I was firing off questions, and it was just such a cool experience. And it was just a sightseeing flight, right? But we were coming back into the airport, and the pilot was actually one of the instructors at the flight school. And so when we were coming back, what I now know is final. We were coming in on final, and the flight instructor, he's like, "Do you want to help me like land the plane?" And I was like, "Oh," and I thought like maybe it's kind of crazy, but like in a second I was like, "Yeah, yes I do." So so I like had my hands on the controls, didn't really know what was going on, but it was just cool to be a part of, and then we brought it into the flare, and then as soon as the wheels touched, I was like, I want to do that again. So we jumped out, and then I got out of the plane, and my parents were standing there, and they were like, "How'd it go?" And I was like, "I landed the plane."
That is so cool. That's so exciting. What a great first interaction with aviation.
Exactly, right. It was just so upfront and so personal, like such a personal experience. So I jumped out of the plane, and I said that I'd landed it, and my mom was like, "What?" It was a sightseeing flight, but that was really the moment that started this whole thing for me, which I think is hopefully something we get to talk about a little bit more, of those little moments that become big defining moments. But so it was a sightseeing flight, and kind of right after that, I still wasn't thinking aviation as a career. I was just thinking that was like just a really awesome opportunity that I want to continue flying. But I was in grade 10 at the time, and I was in my careers class, which again, timing. But so I was talking to my parents, and they had said, "Well, why don't you look at a career in aviation for your final presentation?" And so I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." So I started looking at the schools and the experience, and the training, and how to do all of that. So that was really kind of, I'll talk maybe a bit more about that in the other question, but so from there, then that's just, I got going and started on my PPL training. And then I went to Conestoga College and with the Waterloo Wellington Flight Center, did the rest of my training out of there, all the way up to multi-IFR, and got my IATRA. I finished in March of 2023. And then in 2022, I was the recipient of the Jazz Aviation Pathway Award. So that allowed me to interview and try to get a job with Jazz. And the thing is that you get to interview at a lower time threshold. So it was 250, and I think I had 252 by the time I was done. So all my requirements, and so I was, and then I started my initial type rating in August of 2023. So a few months later, and yeah, and so now I'm a first officer on the RJ with Jazz, and I've been doing that for about a year and a half, which is that was my whole dream. Like as soon as in my careers class, I was like, this is what I want to fly, this is what I want to work for, this is how I'm going to do it. So now doing that is just I'm very grateful. I'm very happy to be where I am.
That is an amazing story, start to finish. Like that's just an amazing journey. And little did your mom know, as soon as you landed that plane with the flight instructor, that you were set on a path that even you didn't know.
Exactly. And some of the essays I write, when I was writing that story out, I said, we landed on the runway, but little did I know I landed on my future career. So it's
that's a perfect way of putting it. Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. So it's been an awesome 6 years for me. I guess 10 years for you.
Yeah. 10 years for me, almost. And well, I guess by the time this airs, it will be 10 years. So we just touched what initially inspired you to build your career in aviation. I think you kind of already answered that question.
Yeah.
So I think, when did your passion for this industry turn into a professional pursuit? Was that in the classroom when you were looking into the careers class?
And what I think is, so like I said, I'm a first generation pilot. And I think especially as being a female pilot, I don't know, it seemed like aviation was something that, like I said, was kind of in my realm of possibilities. It's just not something that I feel is as presented to females as it is. And so I can't really necessarily give an example, but I just think that it doesn't seem that something that's attainable or just kind of, right. So, it was really cool to just have the timing work out that I could be in a spot to look into all of that stuff. And, so then I was able to look at more of a career, like what company could I work for? Who do I like? Why do I want to work for that company? What school could I go to do this? What type rating or, what ratings and licenses do I need to do that? How much is it going to cost? How am I going to do that? What schools can I go to? And so it was really
did you figure all of those points out?
Yeah.
During your class?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of research right out of the gate.
It was, right? And I think we needed to do like a 20-minute presentation. So it was like a ton of this information, but it was all the stuff that I needed to work with, right? So, and I even ended up making a resume that I've tweaked now, obviously in a big way, but I still kind of use the same format. So that class was just really important for me. And there was a Air Canada pilot that came in and did a talk on aviation. So that was also really helpful as well, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, especially if you don't have any other contacts in the industry that you're looking at, to have those people come in and share that information from a personal perspective was just super helpful. So that was, that was really when it started to become like I could do this.
You could do this.
I can fly planes for a job. Like, it doesn't get cooler than that, right? So
no. I mean, I'm inclined to agree there.
Yeah. We might be a bit biased, but we don't know.
Well, my story is very similar, so I definitely relate to you. I never thought of aviation with my image in my mind growing up was, the typical captain with a mustache.
Yes.
So it was never on my mind until I was asked the question, why didn't you become a pilot? I was like,
oh. Right?
That's a thing. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Because you walk on because I feel like people see aviation as like the traveling and the airliners, right? So you walk onto the plane and you're thinking about where am I sitting? I gotta get my boarding pass out. I getting my passport out for the third time. It's just like I just gotta go sit down, right? So, but to take it's like if you can take that moment to take a look to the left and look up front and see that there's a whole other world up there. I think that's what I try to do with now being up in the front, just try to bring people up and when I can on the ground when they're kind of boarding, just to show them that there's more up here than it's accessible. So I think,
and it's attainable.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And especially I think that there's there's 7% female pilots worldwide, so there's work to be done there, but representation I think is the way to do it.
Yeah, agreed. So in all of your research, what kind of led you to see that jazz was your end dream goal
Mm-hmm.
for your pilot career? What kind, like after all of you did some extensive research. What led you to that?
Yeah, and so this is all like kind of from my own personal experience and research that I've done. I won't talk on like behalf of the company, but for me, what I found, what I really liked was just how involved they were in the community. Like they fly RJs into Girls Can Fly, and it just seems like community and representation and like kind of team is just very, very important to the company. And so that was just something that I really admired from a young age. And year after year, they were winning awards and hiring people with diversity. I don't know if I'm saying it the exact way that the award is, but just it just felt very inclusive and accepting and welcoming. And I think that was just something overall of my time and experience growing up, that was just something I thought was really important, and I really wanted to be part of that community.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then along your journey, did you have any mentors that after your research and you started going down that path, did you have some main mentors that kind of helped you along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, mentorship is just so important. It was right from the beginning, my instructors. I'm a member of the 99s, and then Northern Lights Aero Foundation, and there's Women in Aviation International, Canadian Women in Aviation. So a lot of those organizations were super helpful to me right away, because I was doing my flight training, but it almost, I don't know if you felt this as well, but it at a certain point, it felt a little individual, like it was like this individual thing that you're working on. But then, so it was, I think it was November 2020, and one of my, so the pilot that came in to talk to my careers class, he reached out and said, you should look at applying for some of these scholarships or being involved in these organizations. And I was like, didn't even know they existed. And so, right. But then it just opened up this whole new world for me, where I had like a support system of people that I could turn to, and people that were going through similar experiences, and all these different events that I could go to, and people like organizations I could be part of. And then I was able to find like actual mentorship relationships through like a lot of these different organizations that I could turn to and ask all my questions to, right? Like I said before, you don't know what you don't know, and finding those people that can answer those questions are really beneficial along the way. Yeah, and then my flight school was just so helpful, and it was awesome. There were so many things that I could be involved in, and it was just a very supportive environment in both schools that I was a part of. The Webster Trophy, I still keep in touch with the finalists from there. My friends.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's you never know where you're going to meet people, and it's just fun to like have a bunch of friends from different sides of the aviation industry. But and then at my company, in my initial typewriting course, I keep in touch with a lot of those people, and then like your question asked, as you progress, like now that I'm working, a lot of the captains I turn to just for advice and for support, even outside of work, which has been another reason why I really enjoy being with my company. So. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember if you answered this question. Where did you go to school? Where did you end up doing your flight training and everything?
So it was the Conestoga College Aviation Program in Kitchener, and then it was at the Waterloo Wellington Flight Center. So
nice.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And did they have big classes? I don't know anything about this school.
Yeah.
Was it a very big flight school? Was it very intimate, more smaller?
Yeah. So
what was your experience?
Started my at Conestoga, and with Waterloo, I started like right in the beginning of COVID. It was September 2020. So nothing was normal. So I don't really know what a baseline would be. I think from what my memory, like that they used to have like 80 students maybe, but we had 32. So it was significantly smaller, and I don't really know about the university, because University of Waterloo also trains at that flight center. But for us, there was 32, which actually there were 7 female pilots. I thought I was going to be the only one, and there was like nearly a third.
Wow.
So I thought that was really cool.
That's amazing,
right? So and I think that was another thing that I enjoyed about my flight school, is that it was like 20% female, and there was just it was a lot.
That's huge.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's I did my flight training there, and so I don't really know what a baseline would be, because it was COVID. But there were 32 of us, and I came in with my private license because I started my PPL training in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was awesome too. Like I had 2 spares in the morning, so I'd go fly and then go to math in the afternoon. So it's just like
that's the way to live high school.
But yeah, and so I was able to kind of be I was in the fast track program of the Conestoga, so I was able to start my night rating while the others were starting. So I was kind of a step ahead, so I was using the planes at night instead. So it progressed nicely for me. But yeah, even then there was like a third, I think, of what normally is at the school.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So then the next question is, what's been the most rewarding project or accomplishment in your professional journey?
See, I was looking at these questions beforehand, and that was the one that stumped me. I think that
you don't have to have an answer to it if you don't really have one.
Well, I think it was more so that I just had a few. Like, I think just being able to do something that I love so much is an accomplishment itself. But like getting my private license when I was in high school, I think that was like a big new accomplishment.
That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, it was
a really big accomplishment.
Yeah, and just kind of that first step forward on kind of what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, to finish that, and being a part of the Webster competition in 2022, and then, like I was telling you, getting hired by Jazz. It was something that I wanted to do since I started flight training. So then to be there, but if I could just share a story, I think that
go for it.
Yeah, the thing that I think led me to kind of achieve a lot of these things and just kind of be the person that I am came from when I was in grade 7. So taking me back a little bit, but it was, so my brother has Down syndrome, and so I grew up kind of around that, like helping out at the different organizations and volunteering with Special Olympics and all of that. And when I was in grade 7, I was in a grade 7-8 split class. And there was a boy in the class who had autism, and so my brother, when he was growing up, he had like this amazing group of friends that he still keeps in touch with, and they were together. They were the same age. They were together all the way through high school and all of that. So I was always like, I think as a family, we all just felt very lucky that he had such a great group and such a great support system. And so when I got to grade 7, there was the boy, and it just seemed like he was disconnected from the group. He sat in the corner, and he didn't, I don't know, they would kind of, and I just realized that they were talking to him in a way that was just very disrespectful and saddening to me, because I see how much of a difference it made with my brother Jarrett to have such a strong support group. And, these are supposed to be the people that were supporting him. And, right. So it was just, it was hard to see that. And, sorry. Yeah. So it was a little hard to see that, and it was pretty natural for me to kind of step in and just, you want to come to my group, and you want to, like, you can hang with my group at recess. And then when he didn't want to go out at recess, then we would, my friends and I would go to the gym, and I would set up games for him to play. And it was just not even something that I thought I was like, I didn't, I went to a small school. I had like a smaller group of friends. I didn't really think anyone was kind of watching me too closely. So it was just awesome to see, just him like be in a space where he felt like he was welcomed and encouraged. And, but like I said, I was hanging out with him every day, so I didn't really see too much of a difference in him. But then at the end of the school year, there was like an end of year award assembly, and I got the leadership award. It's on my wall, but I got the leadership award for kind of making a difference in this boy's kind of great final year of elementary school. And it was just like, I just remember walking up there and being shocked. Like, I had no idea what they were talking about. Right? Because it was just something that I didn't really see a difference in him, because it was just so gradual, because I was seeing him all the time. But then to kind of take a step back, I could see all the other people in the class. They were inviting him to their friend groups, and they were, going to sit with them and going to sit at his desk for lunch, and he was speaking up in class. And so I think I was only 12 or 11, but to see leadership from a different side, like, leadership isn't always loud and from the front like it can be, and that sometimes is what needed, but it can also be silent and just by demonstration, setting an example. So I think that was just something that then going forward, it was like, you can be a leader no matter if you are or not. Like, you can lead by example. And And I think that's what led me to do a lot of the volunteering things that I'm doing now with Special Olympics and with the Women in Aviation, like any way that I can kind of give back and help and show people that they're welcomed and encouraged to keep following and being, doing what they want to do. I think that's something that has really kind of created the foundation for, I guess, the person that I am. So when I think back of all the things that I've done, I'm lucky. I feel like to have a lot of awesome things to think about, but I think that's the standout.
I think that is well put. I think that's a great award, and I think, you definitely changed the atmosphere just by doing one simple action in your mind. You felt you had to do that and reach out to him,
Mm-hmm.
but it was nice that you actually got to see the completion of that simple action.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone gets to see what a small act of kindness does.
Mm-hmm.
You can just do it and then hope that it turns out all right, but you actually got to see the completion.
Yeah.
And are you still in contact with him?
Yeah, I saw him. He still lives in town, so I saw him like the other day walking through the park, and I said hi. And even in high school, I was volunteering with Special Olympics, so I'd go help him with different track and field events and stuff, and travel to the events with him. So yeah, it was still keep in contact with him, and he's doing really well. So it's really good to see.
Yeah, that's a really special story. Thank you for sharing it. I love
it. I think it's just a big story, a big part of my life. So I was happy to be able to. Yeah.
And regardless of aviation being a career or hobby or whatever it is, like you put before our interview, we're still humans.
Yeah.
We're still people.
Yeah.
And those actions matter regardless of whatever we do in the aviation space.
Yes, absolutely. And we're the pilots, but it's the human behind the pilot that makes the pilot, I think. So yeah, no.
I completely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, to go on an opposite side of accomplishment, what was the biggest setback, or what was a couple setbacks?
Yeah, I think, and like we talked about beforehand, I think it's important to, it's awesome to hear all these great stories and these uplifting moments, but I think it also, as humans and as pilots, naturally we face different setbacks that I think are important to talk about because it makes them normal and it makes them okay to talk about and share. It makes me, I think, it feel like we're, not alone. I think in aviation, one thing that I found is that, a lot of the times it's about professionalism and standards and meeting those standards. And so when you can't, or there's different setbacks, it's important to know you're not alone in that. And so for me, there was a few things. I mean, COVID, I think I had 30 hours, towards my PPL, like 30 hours total. So I was training towards my PPL and then COVID, right? And so, I wasn't able to fly, I think, for like about 6 months. And then if I wanted to get into the Conestoga program, I needed to finish my license within a month and a half. So,
oh my goodness. But in COVID.
Yeah. So we were wearing masks. But it was like, my instructors were a huge part of like helping me kind of achieve that and just I was flying 3 times a day. And it was out of my local flight school here. So it's a smaller town, which is I don't know, easier to get availability on the plane. But yeah, some days I was flying 3 times a day. But I loved it. I loved every part of it. So that was awesome. And getting into, with my brother having Down syndrome, he had his immune system was a little weaker. And so I took a break during my flight training for a few months just to make sure that I wasn't bringing anything back to him and still studying in the meantime, still trying to work towards getting the other things done. But, so that was a little bit of a setback because you come back and I mean, it's hard to kind of get back to, you lose the skills and you lose, like, you kind of shake the rust off.
But, yeah, absolutely. I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. And, and then I was like, I think timing is just really important to talk. Like, it's trusting the timing and not getting yourself kind of too stressed out because we got this whole world and this whole career ahead of us. But I was so like, after I got the Jazz Award, I was like, I need to be done at this time, and there's a pilot shortage. I need to be done. I need to and all this stuff, and I'm like, go, write the license, do the exam, and then there was kind of an ice a bit of an ice event when I was snowboarding.
Yeah.
I ended up breaking my wrist, so I was out for a few months.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I was out for a few months with that, and but like I was talking about before, like I was working on the other stuff that I could, what I could control. I was trying to do that, and what I couldn't, I just tried not to let it affect me too much. But we're humans, so that's kind of stuff does affect you. So yeah, so there's definitely like, and I mean, I dealt with a bit of imposter syndrome too, like right at the beginning of finishing up my type rating, and I think that's a pretty natural feeling as well. So there's just different setbacks, but I think it's like, that's one thing that I try to tell myself is, can I control it? Yes. Then this is my plan. And if I can't, well, why am I worrying about it? So,
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. So do you try to, in any situation, I mean, I guess aviation or otherwise, try to ask yourself those questions to kind of realign or reassess to manage stress in the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'm sure you could relate to this too. I think aviation, it seems like it's, very standard, and there's operating procedures and there's professionalism in this. This is how we do things, but a lot of it is about mindset too. Right. And
100%. I mean, that's why we go through all this training to talk about how to deal with different attitudes and moods and how to counteract them and stuff like that. It applies to everything. Yeah, exactly.
And so I think just having like that strong mindset is something that I try to do, whether it's like, I have an incredible family. I'm so grateful to have such amazing parents that I can talk to all the time, and incredible mentors that kind of help me build this mental, like that resilience. But it's a lot of those different things that I learn and I try to pass on as a mentor myself. But it's like, like what can I control? And if and I'll make my plan from there. And I also say, there's just different things that I try to incorporate and to make things all a little bit easier. But that's definitely one of them is, if I can control it, then this is my plan. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Mindset is huge.
I thought of a question that going back a little bit, what was your parents' reaction to you starting on this path?
I'm happy you asked that because I'm really happy you asked that, because I ask them about that sometimes, because that in it, like when I was doing that sightseeing flight, like it didn't see, like at the time I didn't see like a career out of it, right? So it just, I don't know if it like there's moments that stand out in my mind, but there's some that like don't as much. And so I try to ask them, I've asked my parents a few times, like, what did you think about that all that? Like, were you like on board or were you, like, but I think that from what they tell me, and from what I remember, they were on board right from the beginning, like reaching out on my behalf to different industry contacts and different pilots, and it's always been something that I've been interested in. I've always liked traveling, and when we'd go on vacation, they'd say one of my favorite parts was the plane. So I think that there was some initial like indicators there that was like it was understandable, or it made sense. And so they were just awesome right from the start, supporting me, and they were the ones that encouraged me to do the presentation in the careers class. So I had all this information that I was really excited to share with them about what I was learning. And so I think that also showed them, like, I'm really interested in wanting to do this, and then I also found that I could do a discovery flight, which is a great way to start, right? And so I did that, and I think it was just kind of one thing after another that I see that there was something that I wanted to do. So, and I was 15, right? So my parents had to drive me to my flight training.
So you learned how to fly before you could drive.
So, yes, they were awesome right from the beginning, and and my dad is into, like, he's for his work, he's part of the kind of the transport truck industry, so he knew all about engines and all about engines and stuff like that. So he was interested in that, and that's something that we've really been able to kind of, like, he's been able to tell me about engines and the carburetor and the oil and the whatever. So so it's just
all the connections, like it's still machine.
Yeah, exactly. So it was awesome to have so much support right off the beginning from them.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, but You definitely have an amazing family.
Yeah, I do.
Have you taken them up with
Yes.
you, like your parents and your brother, and what were their thoughts on that? Were they taking pictures the entire time?
Yeah, yeah. So my mom and my dad were my first passengers after I got my private license. It was so cool to take them
That
up.
would have been pretty special.
Oh, it was so special. It was just like, this is what I've been working on for a year, and so this is. I was only, I think I was just 18, so I was like, "Are you sure you're?" Yeah, no, they like jumped in like no hesitation. So it was that was also really affirming to me too. But yeah, so they were really excited, and then I got to take up my brother. I took up my brother and my dad like maybe a few weeks later, and my brother was so funny. He was sitting in the back, and so our headsets are all, unless you transmit on the actual frequency, you're just talking to everyone at the plane, right? But he was like,
exactly.
but on the microphone, he was like, so it was just me and my dad, but he was like, "Hello, people of the world," and like, this is, he was saying his name, and he was like, "Broadcasting live," and
oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, just made it for a really special moment to have him be a part of that, and just have him be so kind of comfortable and excited about it too. So
yeah,
I haven't been able to get them like while I've been working, like on a flight while I'm working, but hopefully that's coming up. So now that I'm based closer to home, I've got a schedule, so I know what flights I'm doing. It's going to be easier. So yeah. But,
that's so fun.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is, how do you see the aviation or aerospace industry evolving, and how does that influence your work?
Yeah.
And it's your work as a first officer currently.
Yes. So that's, I mean, that was a tough question too, because I feel that I have, like, I've only got a year and a half in the industry, and I've obviously like been observing the industry for the last 6 years, but I think I wrote down a few points that I thought were interesting, but yeah, I think it'll be a continued focus on safety and professionalism, as we look towards increasing safety and understanding like what different things and things that we could be implementing to make sure that it's as safe as it can be. That's just, from a pilot perspective, that's just continued dedication to meet the standards, to show up prepared, and to know the manual and to know the plane. Yeah, and I think that there's also an increased need for mentorship and support in the universities and college, right? Because there's like me, there's students that are able to kind of go from a flight training environment straight to a work environment, and so that can be quite the jump. And to have that mentorship to say, so I volunteer with the Airline Pilots Association with the Education Committee, and so we go right now. We're going into different universities, and right now I'm going with the University of Waterloo. But we talk about day in the life of an airline pilot, and this is what this looks like, and this is how you can do well on your sim eval. Here's how you make an aviation resume, and here's how you do well on an interview. So having that support and mentorship, I think, is going to be incredibly important. And even if they're like, even go to like a 705, like going up north to fly, I think those skills are incredibly important for any kind of pilot coming in and like a university or college program. So I think that there's increased need for that, which I'm very happy to be a part of with ALPA. And I think this is one that I think no pilot really likes to think about, but there's kind of that push towards single pilot operations, and I think that's so
we've all heard the rumblings.
Yes, exactly. So maybe you and I are a bit biased, but I think just looking from an outside perspective, I think it's just so apparent that it's very crucial to operate, like I was talking about, with the highest level of safety. And that's one thing when we go into the simulator for recurrent training, is one of the hardest things to do, is because they'll tell the pilot that, like, so when you go in for recurrent training, you go in with two people, right? Because we fly as two pilot operation. And so the instructor will tell the person that you're with to not be unresponsive, or right, so to simulate unconsciousness or single pilot operations. And that's just one I find personally one of the hardest things in recurrent training or simulator training to do, is because there's all these calls and you're operating this aircraft and it's going 100, 200 knots, all right? And it's like so fast.
Yeah, there's so many things that it's not like a small aircraft that we trained on. You're dealing with so many more factors at multiplied the speed.
Yeah, multiplied speed. Increased like 10 to 10, like the airspace is tenfold with extra traffic. And so it's, so I think that that's just something that I keep going back to, is I can't imagine being in a spot where it's single pilot. So I don't know if there's too much that I think it would influence my work by, I don't know actually how it would influence my work. I think that there's different ways you could look at that, but I hope that there's continued push towards, from like, especially the Airline Pilots Association, push to kind of keep it to pilot. I think that that's just the best way to kind
focus on more continued excellence in training versus removal of another crew member.
Yeah, exactly. Because, we talked about before, a huge part of aviation is about mindset. And so as humans, we're susceptible to different parts of, like, different biases and different errors. And you could look at it that either way. Like, maybe it's better than technology to kind of be more whatever. But I think it's personally the opposite way, is that we need people who are qualified and professionals and who are trained on many different situations to combat those biases together and find the best and most safest way forward to operate the aircraft. And there's a lot of different situations, especially in different manuals of that I've read in flight training all the way up to work, is that you have to, in certain cases, you have to use your own discretion. And so, if
definitely.
Right. So if this technology that we're operating doesn't have that critical thinking or that creative thinking to look at all these different factors of the situation and have that extra critical thinking to combat those different situations that are not what it's kind of coded for. I think that there's obviously a need for the trained professionals that we see in pilots, and to have two of those, I think, is just, and sometimes three in the long haul operations. I think that's which personally what is needed to continue to have safe operations of aircraft. Because you look at flight radar and you see how many airplanes are in the sky, like, and when you zoom out, you can't even see land. So
no, they're everywhere, and you don't think about it when you look up in the sky. You don't see all of them, but then when you look at the actual radar, there's a lot of aviation going on where we're not even aware half the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's just kind of my take on it. And I have limited experience in the aviation industry, but I think that's what I think.
Well, that's a good point. So, second last question is, what's the most important lesson from your time in the industry, whether it was as a private pilot or as a first officer in your current position? Or a couple lessons.
I wrote down three. I think that always looking for opportunities to learn. I think, you can probably attest to this as well, but there's never, when you get to a job, like I was working yesterday and there's like still things that I'm writing down that I'm learning. And, it's an industry and it's a job that you'll always be learning. And I'm sure many industries are the same, but it's very prevalent in aviation, I think. And so always looking for opportunities to kind of look to better yourself and your skills as a pilot. I think also build a strong support system, like we talked about. There's a lot of things that come up where you need to have that strong support system, whether it is to lift you up, but also I think to celebrate your accomplishments and to have that sense of community. I think it really adds to the whole experience of being in aviation, is to have that community of people who are so like-minded and just very understanding of what it takes to actually do the things that you're doing. So and then just enjoy the journey. Like, there's so many times where I was working yesterday, I'm looking out the window, I'm like, there's no way, like right, like it just seems there's the sun setting, and it's such an incredible industry. And I think that your office is just not one space. It's like this moving office all over the country, and even when you're in flight training, like you're learning how to fly planes for work or for school. And like as a flight instructor, you're working and you're training from the sky. Like, it's just this interesting thing that is just very different than I think from traditional work, and it's in every job is their own and unique, and we need people doing every job that there is, but to enjoy the journey while to enjoy the journey while you're on it, and just kind of when things get hard to sit back and appreciate the little moments. I think it's just it really helps the whole thing. So, yeah.
That's really great points. You never stop learning. Definitely not in this industry, but it's a really good lesson for any industry.
Yeah,
everything is constantly changing. So, yeah, I love those points.
Yeah, good.
All right, you got one final one, and then we can talk about any other questions that maybe I haven't asked.
Yeah.
What is some guidance you would offer to someone aiming to succeed in the same aviation career path as yourself?
Mm-hmm. So this is another one where I had a few points, because I think it's just it's kind of multifaceted. It's hard to know exactly like this. There's no one technique or one way to do anything. Like, you know,
every as we've said, every person's path is different.
And every
but if there's any key points that you can think about, because it's hard.
Every endpoint or every person's place where they want to end up is different. So I think there's no way to say like this is the guidance. But for me personally, I think the overarching points are just having a growth mindset. Like I talked about, always be willing to learn, and never like, you know, there's feedback that's like it's about, like, I think separating yourself as a pilot or as like a person to a pilot, I guess, in a way that when you're getting feedback, it's in a way that's designed to help you become a better pilot. And so if you learn to just accept that for what it is, and maybe there's some that's, you know, a little more harsh than others, and so you try to filter that out in a way that you can, but to just be understanding that there's always a way to continue to be better and to learn. I think that's just a really great way to do, to kind of go about succeeding, especially if you want to kind of work in aviation. I think having a positive attitude when people are going through their sim evaluations to kind of go to work. I always just say they're going to teach you how to fly whatever airplane you're going to be on, but you need to show up as a person that will succeed, right? You need to show up with a positive attitude, be willing to work with another person, be willing to have, to learn and to have those good communication skills. So, you know, they can teach you how to fly the plane, but you have to kind of show up and be the good person as well. There's a responsibility there for you too. And just kind of be willing to put in that hard work. You know, there's lots of late nights of studying and maybe missing out on things that you didn't really want to miss out on, but it's like to kind of dig deep and still remembering that you're a human first, but also just, you know, there's hard work that's needed there too. So yeah, and then just setting personal limitations. Like if you're not comfortable with something, then being able to say, you know, that crosswind's a little too high for me. I said this yesterday. There was a crosswind that was kind of at the limit, but it was just inside. And I was like, yeah, no, that's just something that I'm not as comfortable with. And so if the captain could take control, and if you don't mind if I could shadow the controls, I'd really appreciate that. And so to have those personal limitations, I think is really helpful. To be adaptable to different situations, like we talked about COVID, or there's different things that come up that you can't control, and there's things that come up that you can control, but to be able to be adaptable. I think to trust yourself too, like we talked about, imposter syndrome is hard to combat. I think networking is really important. Anywhere you can kind of go to those opportunities and meet who you can and stay in touch and ask those questions. I think that's been really helpful for me. Yeah, and then just looking for opportunities. Aviation is a place where you can work and where you can fly, but there's also like communities of people that you can be involved with, and there's things like this that you get to do, like to share your experience and meet people that you might not have had the chance to meet. So yeah, I think that's just a great way to end off, because I'm very happy to have been on this podcast, and I just, like you and I talked about, like this is a year in the making. You know, you had reached out about this idea a year ago, and then when I got your email about wanting to be on the first episode, it was just like, right. So it's just, if you let it, aviation can be really enriching beyond just the flying aspect of it.
Absolutely. Well, I have been absolutely thrilled and honored that you were willing and open to being on this podcast, and absolutely so thankful for your stories and your insights and everything. It's been absolutely wonderful, and this is definitely a credit to the 99s for sure, because otherwise we never would have met.
That's right.
So, and I mean, we still haven't met in person, actually.
Oh, we haven't. But it's just up, and there's a lot of amazing events at our chapter specifically, but then the section is doing so. I'm hoping we get to meet sometime this summer or this spring. So
yeah, that would be awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for the very first episode of Skyward. A huge thank you to Alivia Chanyi for sharing her inspiring journey from the ground up and giving us a glimpse into the life of a professional pilot. She gave us some great points about the importance of personal minimums, the importance of random acts of kindness, choosing community. She gave some points like the 99s. And most importantly, you're more than a pilot. We're all human in the end of the day. I hope her story inspired you and encouraged you today. Tune in next time for another aviation story. Until then, I wish you a great week and sound skies. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. To those listening on Apple and Spotify, remember to follow and hit the notification button so you'll never miss an episode. Check out the Skyward YouTube channel to watch the video recording of each episode. Lastly, don't forget to follow on all social media platforms to stay up to date. Your support means the world. Thanks for tuning in.